with this being our first episode, it kind of just feels appropriate that we share with the audience a little bit of what our intentions are for maybe this podcast as a whole, a bit of how we came to creating it, and then probably on the other side of that, a little bit about each of us.
Yeah.
Give the audience at home a little bit of context for what they're about to hear and who they're about to hear it from. I guess let's set the scene and build the container for what this podcast is.
Sure. So, this podcast was something we both felt compelled and called to create. We wanted to make a space where we can slow down, listen, explore what it means to be human, and reflect on the human experience.
And I feel like but you and I both kind of already identified that this exists in our life already through our authentic conversations
Yeah.
with the real people in our lives. Like we're already having these conversations and we may as well start sharing it with people because it's possible that not everybody's experiencing conversation in this way and connection in this way. So I feel like a part of this podcast is really sharing what it is that you and I already have in our lives. It's these spaces where you don't have to be afraid or shying away from difficult conversation. Spaces where maybe heavy emotion can exist or difficulties and failures can be talked about or conflict can be discussed without having to be afraid and monitor your language.
Yeah. No need to censor yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like that's a huge part of what it is that we're wanting to build here and offer.
Yeah. A safe space to explore.
Yeah, explore this human experience, whether it's experiences that you and I have each shared in our lives already, or experiences that a guest may come on with their stories so that we can then share how we relate.
Yeah. And people always have so many unique experiences
Mm,
and also a lot of similar ones.
yeah,
And when we talk about our story, we bring on a guest to talk about their story, there will always be something that someone out there will resonate with, that
yeah,
they'll learn from, and that they'll feel a little less alone about.
yeah. It's just a space that we can all connect, feel seen, feel like we're relatable, talk about relationships and growth and purpose and these big things that often don't get spoken about because they can be a little uncomfortable because they're big and there's
Yeah,
a lot of unknown within them.
yeah, and that's scary.
That's scary.
Yeah,
But what I've found is when you ground into those big, scary conversations with someone else, it makes them a little bit less scary. And it all of a sudden gives you a space that you can operate from in which you can start to try and cultivate some clarity of these larger spaces where there's so much unknown and realize that throughout these big spaces, we're actually all connected.
yeah,
So I think that's what we're trying to offer here.
yeah.
Trying to offer a space where we can just be present.
Where we can cultivate clarity by sharing our authentic stories, our conversations, and some new lenses, new perspectives.
Yeah.
Look at life through.
Yeah. And hopefully for everyone listening at home, I invite you to share your own stories. Share anything that you hear that resonates with you and how it is that you experience the same thing as us.
Yeah,
I'm realizing that all of that speaking we've just done, and we still haven't even said who we are. Like, they don't even know what our names are yet. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves here, let's slow down and take a moment to introduce ourselves. My name is Daniel, and I'm joined here by my co host.
my name's Clay.
I feel like both Clay and I we've come to this path and we're kind of walking the same path at this point in our lives, but we've come from very opposite worlds.
Very different.
So let's take a moment to share a little bit of a background about each of us and how we got here and give all the listeners at home some context for who we are.
And talk a little bit about why this podcast means so much to us.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start. As I said before, my name is Daniel. I am a spiritual guide and life coach in Denver, Colorado. And I think the best way to share a bit about myself and how I got here is looking at the theme of service throughout my life. As I look back, I realize it's something that I've always really been attached to is being of service to the people and the things around me. I grew up in small town Wisconsin, shout out Marshfield, population 20,000 people. I grew up on a dairy farm, which gave me a very unique childhood experience and perspective that most people my age didn't have the privilege of experiencing. What that childhood did give me, though, was a sense of service being attached to my belonging. I was born into service. Uh, I was raised in a environment where discipline and responsibility and service and helping and you know making other people's lives a little bit easier was just a part of my life. I didn't really have a say in it. I was almost obligated to be that version. And as I look back, I can now see how being of service has existed throughout my entire life, and I didn't really notice it for a long time. I was someone who, as soon as I got to school and was around my peers and other kids, I noticed that I understood things really well and rather quickly, making me someone who was very often of service to the students sitting around me in class if there was ever a situation where maybe they didn't understand a topic or they didn't understand something the teacher was sharing. And I noticed that I did, so I would help them. And that theme just kept showing up. I realized that I just wanted to help people and I wanted to help other people understand. It brought me to college. College was a time of a lot of freedom for me. I was no longer at home living on the farm where my schedule was rather controlled by people around me. And I had a lot of free time that I just kind of I really poured into my social commitments at that time. I was really having fun and exploring my social connections and again, I didn't have to focus that much. I just kind of floated through school, not knowing what I wanted. And it's almost as though when you don't have a destination, it can be pretty easy to not move in any explicit direction. So I end up graduating college, believing that what I wanted to do at that time was be a teacher. It was the good enough option for what I felt I had available to me. However, by the time I was student teaching and about to graduate, I realized at that point that this isn't something that I want to do. So I graduate with a degree that I have no intention of using, which is a great place to be. I often have found myself in that liminal chapter of life of, fuck if I know where I'm going. Fortunately and unfortunately, I always had a dairy farm to land back on. So post college, I moved back to Marshfield to live with my family and work on the farm where I am very well received and they're very appreciative of my help. I always felt a lot of gratitude from my family. The farm was really never meant for me though. I always felt kind of like a fish out of water there, where I can exist very comfortably and be very of service and helpful, but not really feel like I fit in with the people around me. Like I have two sides of my family and that family never felt that resonant. I end up meeting the woman that I am for my first relationship with. I was a very late bloomer in that sense. I was 25 when I was in my first relationship. And I fell in love with this person rather quickly. All of that of service energy, that desire to be helpful energy, got funneled into this other human, for better or worse. I really enjoyed the feeling making someone else feel good, felt great, and I felt really appreciated still. That of service energy very quickly became blind love and faith and almost devotion to this other human in a way that I wasn't quite aware of at the time and that I don't regret at all. It just isn't the healthiest version of myself. But what that devotion allowed for me was I followed this person to places that I had no right following and would have never done on my own. I discovered freedom with this person. I discovered separating from society with this person and exploring nature and a love for exploration, returning to something slower and simpler, returning to presence and connection. All of these things were kind of brought to me on a platter by this human that I was just serving at the time. you know, it does feel at times like I was a servant, but of choice. That was the relationship as I look back. And it was a bit reciprocal as well. So I don't want to paint it as something unhealthy. Eventually, all roads come to an end. And after 8 years with this person, I find myself separating from them as it just seemed like our lives were going in opposite directions. Almost as though we had grown as much as we could together and learned as much as we could from one another. And our connection at this point was almost keeping us small. Like we had been in this shared tank together, and now we've both outgrown the tank and we can't go to the next one together. So I moved to Denver, Colorado, fall of 2024, almost a year ago today. And for the first time, I'm feeling like an individual version of myself, separate from any sort of the support structures and people that I had always had available to me. And having this feeling that I have something to offer and that I can be of value and of service to other people just because of who I am. However, I didn't really know what it was that I did. I didn't know myself at all. I didn't know my individual hobbies or interests or what I wanted. I, I was just kind of like I was starting my life at age 33. So I've spent a year trying to build out my own life coaching business. And what that path has looked like was starting in a place where I didn't know myself at all and I had never had space given to me from other people to figure out who I am. And through a year of a lot of patience and time and space and reflection, I've begun to explore who I am. I've started doing things that make me uncomfortable, things that are new, things that are challenging. And I'm developing a sense of identity. And as this individual me gets discovered by me through my actions, the fascinating thing is my understanding of who I am and my offerings and how it is that I help has also been clarifying. Like it's just been happening. It's not something I've been seeking. Well, it has been on my mind. It just has been a result of choosing me. And it's an experience that I'm really wanting to share with other people in my life through my practice. And it's something that brought me to wanting to make this podcast to share with other people what it is that I've experienced and to allow me to get curious about what it is that they've experienced. Now that I realize that the human experience can be so fascinating and individual, I just I want to hear everybody's story and I want to see how all of our stories connect because I know they do. So, that brings me here sitting across from my friend Clayton Dunn, wanting to explore life and share it with you all.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah,
I
thanks for listening.
think yours is a very powerful story, and I think a lot of people might relate to that in some.
I'm finding that we all have a powerful story to share if we just can identify it.
And can connect with it.
Because I think yours is equally powerful. Um, and I'd like you to share it,
Yeah.
give the people a little bit of an idea of who it is that you are and where you come from.
Yeah. So, my name is Clay. Um, I was homeschooled until college. I lived with my parents even through college, and my dad was always working. He was never emotionally available. And then my mom was had a lot of anxiety, and so she kind of made me and my brother manage her anxiety quite a lot, which was a lot of pressure for me as a kid. And it caused me to grow up way faster because I was adulting my parents essentially. And since I took on the emotions of my parents, it led me to feel very heavy. And I didn't really understand that at the time. And so, like, as a young person, I ended up developing addictions. And these addictions were the only way that I could cope with what was going on. Since I was homeschooled, I had basically no friends. Um, I had basically no social exposure. And then I wasn't very close with either of my parents or my brother. And that was a very lonely experience and one that I didn't know how to process. Nobody taught me how to process. So I just am like in these addictions for years. And
At what age can you identify your first addiction?
I want to say like 10 or younger,
Yeah, that's really early.
really early.
Okay, go ahead.
So I was coping for a long time. So that all came to a head in 2017 when I got my first job. And I remember I was just cleaning the bathrooms at Kroger. And
A local grocery store for those at home.
yeah, Midwest. And I feel like that time away from my addictions had given me enough space to for the emotions that I was suppressing to come up. And so here I am cleaning this bathroom, and all of a sudden I feel a dam break. I feel a just rush of depression, loneliness, brokenness, and despair come over me all at once, just crashing onto me. And I just broke down in my bathroom crying. And ever since then, I was very suicidal. There were a number of close calls throughout my life where I almost killed myself, but didn't.
Mm,
I'm glad I'm still here, but it's kind of scary to think about something.
yeah.
So after this experience, I'm depressed. I start going to college for mechanical engineering and I get good grades. I kind of start making friends, but they weren't really close friends, but they were everything I had. So each friend that I had was very much um, disproportionately important to my life
Mhm,
because I had so few of them. And that led me to be very impacted by every relationship I had.
mhm,
And I got into my first romantic relationship at 18, and I had developed a lot of deep insecurities that I didn't know how to process. And so I think I projected a lot of them onto my partner,
mm,
and that happened over and over. I've been in 6 long-term relationships at this point, and through each of those relationships, they all taught me something and caused me a lot of pain and heartbreak, but I learned something from all of them. I graduate, I move out from my parents, I get my own place. Things feel great for a while. I'm in a new space, new state, new environment
mm,
that I can start building for myself. But I was still kind of building it in a way that was just familiar, right?
mhm.
So my depression is still there. It just was suppressed for a little bit because my environment changed,
You were distracted.
distracted.
Yeah.
But it came back. Wherever you go, there you are.
Mhm,
And it came back, and things just got much worse again. And that combined with financial insecurity, a job that I didn't really like, a career looking back that I didn't really like, in a similar way to Daniel, where you got this degree that you didn't use. I thought that I would be an engineer all my life. I was not. I was an engineer for 3.5 years,
mhm.
basically.
Didn't take long.
Didn't take long. And the entire time I was an engineer, something felt off. Something was something felt incomplete.
Mm,
And Eventually, I just couldn't take it anymore. And through a lot of self discovery, a lot of very painful experiences, led me to get to a point where I know what I'm called to do. And what I'm called to do is to help people grow.
Mhm.
And I knew Daniel at this point after moving to Denver. And he was a life coach. And I saw him on his path. And I felt inspired by that, and also knowing that helping people grow is something I wanted to do, that I had this strong sense, this intuition that joining you on your path was what I was meant to do.
Mm.
And so for the last, I don't know how long it's been, 2, 3 months.
Yeah, this is early October right now. I imagine that you and I first started seriously at least talking about working together mid-August, early August feels
Yeah, it
right.
hasn't even been that long. Wow.
Maybe July.
Maybe.
I don't recall the timeline. Gets a little bit loopy in my head.
Yeah. So not long. And ever since I started following this path, it feels like the universe has been telling me like, good job, you're on the right path, keep going. And it just feels so good to be on this path. And last Wednesday, actually, I submitted my 2 weeks at my job as an engineer.
Ayo.
So on the 17th, I will fully have switched careers. And it's scary. It's really scary to leave everything behind that you know. And it feels like the right move.
Yeah. Um, just as I was sharing in the introduction for the podcast, those big spaces where there's a lot of unknown, like not knowing what's in front of me because I'm not at a job, that's scary.
Terrifying.
It takes it takes something other than understanding to get you through those spaces. And I think that's something that a lot of people challenge or a lot of people struggle with,
Yeah.
not being able to understand and control their actions and their environment based off of their understanding.
Yeah. And understanding is powerful, and a lot of people aren't able to have conversations that help them get to that point.
Yeah.
Maybe their friends aren't satisfying in a way that they would need them to be. They don't mirror or reflect them in the ways that would help people grow. Maybe they're not as invested as you are in a friendship.
I think the most challenging thing is there are so many parts of us that we're unaware of. And if those parts of us don't show up in our reality through our friends or our friends' behaviors or just anybody else demonstrating that back to you, it can be really hard to find.
And how do you grow if you can't see it?
It's why experiencing is so important.
Right.
Going out and living your life and exploring and finding something different, finding someone different, change. They're all opportunities to see parts of you that you haven't had a chance to see before.
Right. And I think that's kind of the goal of this podcast, is provide that for people that don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Help people grow in a way that they can't because they're missing that piece.
Yeah. I want to do my best to lead with transparency and vulnerability, to be an open book of what my life has been, to give other people the opportunity to see if there are parts of my story that resonate with their own,
Yeah.
and hopefully provide a space that lets other people feel safe enough to do the same thing and feel inspired to share their own stories with us.
Yeah. And the guests that we're going to have on this podcast, we've already got one booked. They are going to have some very impactful stories to share with all of you. And
We've got Will Smith booked,
not quite yet.
Kevin Nealon,
No, that's next year.
Bruce Willis. I thought we heard back from Bruce Willis.
No.
Damn. Okay. Well,
Getting there.
they're in the making, I guess.
Getting there.
There was rumblings that those were going to happen.
They're
So
on the list.
yeah.
But yeah, the people that we're going to have on this podcast have impactful stories to share, ones that I know that you and others will resonate with, and I know that you'll get value out of.
That can be said confidently because I'm becoming more aware of, and I'm coming to the understanding that we all have something to share just by sharing our story and our lived experience. You don't have to be anyone special or unique. You just have to be yourself and share it, and there will be resonance.
Authenticity.
There it is.
All you got to do is be authentic when you're sharing your story, and people will resonate with you.
So please feel inspired to follow along, to contribute, to resonate, to reflect, and to come cultivate some clarity with us.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, and hope to see you soon.